Hey folks, welcome back to Stoic Relationships. Let me ask you this. Have you ever felt the shift? That moment when someone realizes you're no longer as invested in them as you once were? It's subtle at first, a slight change in their tone, a new eagerness in their words, or maybe even the way they watch you a little more intently. If you've ever been in this situation, you know it can be both fascinating and frustrating. Fascinating because it reveals so much about human nature, but frustrating because it often leaves you wondering, what's next? How do they process this realization? And more importantly, how should you respond? Relationships, whether romantic or platonic, are built on the foundation of emotional balance. When that balance tips, when one person pulls back, it sets off a chain reaction in the other. It's human nature to crave what seems just out of reach, and when someone senses your detachment, it triggers a series of behaviors that can range from subtle to dramatic. These reactions reveal more about their true feelings than their words ever could. Let's paint a picture. Imagine you've been the one constantly showing interest, sending the texts, making the plans, and carrying the emotional weight of the relationship. Then one day, you stop, not out of malice, but because you've realized something important. Your energy wasn't being matched. Suddenly, they notice. They start to wonder what's changed. And that's where the journey begins. In this video, we're going to unpack the emotional and psychological responses someone has when they sense your interest fading. These aren't just random actions. They're deeply rooted in human behavior, often reflecting a mix of fear, insecurity, and sometimes genuine regret. We'll explore why they might suddenly become more attentive, why they test your resolve, and even why jealousy can creep into the picture. Each reaction is a window into their mindset, and understanding these behaviors will help you navigate the situation with clarity and confidence. Stay with me, folks, because by the end of this video, you'll not only understand their reactions, but also gain insights into how to maintain your emotional balance and reclaim your power in any relationship. Whether you're dealing with a partner, a friend, or even a colleague, these lessons in Stoicism and emotional intelligence will serve you well. Let's dive in and decode the 7 key ways someone reacts when they realize you've lost interest. Trust me, you won't want to miss this. Number 1. The chase begins. Hey, Stoic friends, let's jump straight into the fascinating psychology of human behavior. Have you ever wondered why someone starts chasing you the moment you lose interest? Why the dynamic shifts so dramatically when you pull back? This reaction isn't random. It's rooted in deep psychological tendencies that we all experience to some degree. Let's talk about how this chase begins. When you've been investing your energy into someone, showing interest, reaching out, making plans, and suddenly stop. It creates an unmistakable void. Humans are naturally uncomfortable with voids, especially in relationships. That absence of attention often triggers a reaction, and the first response is usually an attempt to close the gap. They may not even understand why they're chasing you. They just feel compelled to restore the balance. This reaction is tied closely to the concept of scarcity. Psychologists call this reactance. When something feels unavailable or out of reach, it becomes inherently more desirable. The moment your attention is no longer guaranteed, it gains value. They might not have noticed how much they relied on your energy until it's gone. Suddenly, you're not just a person in their life. You're a question mark they feel the need to answer. Imagine this scenario. You've always been the one initiating conversations. You're the one who makes sure the relationship keeps moving forward. But one day, you stop. You don't text. You don't call. You don't make any effort to check in. At first, the other person might not even notice. But over time, they begin to feel it. Your absence becomes louder than your presence ever was, and suddenly, they're texting more often, asking how you're doing, or trying to bring up memories to reconnect. This is the start of the chase. But here's the critical question. Is the chase genuine? Or is it driven by ego and control? Many people chase after what they've lost, not because they truly care, but because their ego can't handle the idea of being left behind. It's not always about you as a person. Sometimes it's about restoring their sense of power. This is why it's essential to stay grounded during this phase. As a Stoic, your job isn't to react emotionally, but to observe. Let their actions speak louder than their words, because consistency is the ultimate test of intention. One fascinating aspect of this process is how it forces the other person to confront their feelings. When you pull back, you're no longer there to fill the emotional gaps in their life. They have to sit with their own thoughts, their own doubts, and their own regrets. This can be a wake-up call for them to reflect on what they truly value. Did they take you for granted? Are they chasing you because they finally see your worth? Or is it just about maintaining the status quo? Let's explore a key example to ground this concept. Imagine you're in a friendship where you're always the one making plans. Over time, you realize the relationship feels one-sided, so you decide to step back. At first, your friend might seem unbothered, but as weeks pass, they start texting you more often, suggesting plans, or reminiscing about shared experiences. On the surface, this might look like genuine effort, but ask yourself, is this behavior consistent, or is it just a temporary reaction to losing your attention? Your silence is a powerful teacher. It forces people to reflect on what they've lost. However, not everyone reacts with the same sincerity. Some people chase because they're genuinely afraid of losing you, while others chase out of habit or ego. This is why patience is your greatest ally. Don't rush to interpret their actions. Instead, observe how they show up over time. True intentions are revealed through consistency, not spur-of-the-moment gestures. Here's another layer to consider. When you step back, you also shift the power dynamic. If you've been the one constantly giving, pulling away creates a sense of imbalance that can be deeply unsettling for the other person. This discomfort is what often drives them to chase. They feel the need to restore their position of control or security. This is why it's so important to remain composed and intentional. Don't fall into the trap of responding emotionally. Let them come to you, but on your terms. So, what's the takeaway here, Stoic friends? The chase is a natural reaction, but it's not always rooted in sincerity. By stepping back, you give others the space to reflect on their actions and decide how they want to show up in your life. It's not about playing games. It's about reclaiming your energy and letting others meet you at the level you deserve. Let's affirm our strength together. Comment below. I'll lead with silence, not desperation. And if this message resonates with you, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. By doing so, you're not just supporting us. You're empowering yourself with tools to navigate life with wisdom and confidence. Let's keep this journey going, Stoic friends. Number 2, testing your resolve through subtle moves. Hey Stoic friends, let's dive deeper into an intriguing dynamic that often unfolds when someone realizes you've pulled away. They begin testing your resolve, but not always in obvious ways. These subtle moves are designed to gauge whether your detachment is real, temporary, or simply a tactic. Let's explore how these behaviors manifest and, more importantly, how you can respond with wisdom and composure. When someone feels the shift in your energy, their first instinct might not be to confront you directly. Instead, they engage in small, seemingly insignificant actions that are meant to test the waters. For instance, they might send a casual text out of the blue, Something simple like, "Hey, hope you're doing well." It's not just a message, it's a probe. They're trying to see if you'll respond with the same enthusiasm as before. Will you engage eagerly, or will you maintain your distance? Another common move is reactivating shared memories. They might bring up an inside joke, mention a place you both loved, or remind you of a time when things were good. These subtle references are calculated. They're meant to pull at your emotions and see if they can rekindle the connection. It's important to recognize these for what they are: attempts to draw you back into the dynamic you've stepped away from. What makes these moves so subtle is that they often appear harmless on the surface. But beneath the surface lies a deeper intent. They're not just reaching out to say hi, they're assessing how much power they still hold. This is why it's essential to respond, not react. A response comes from a place of composure and intention, while a reaction often stems from emotion. If you choose to reply, keep it short, neutral, and clear. Avoid falling into the trap of oversharing or reigniting old patterns. Let's take a moment to unpack the psychology behind these subtle tests. When someone feels like they're losing control in a relationship or dynamic, it creates discomfort. Humans are naturally wired to seek equilibrium, and this discomfort often drives them to act. Testing your resolve is their way of trying to regain a sense of balance. But here's the thing: your strength lies in your ability to remain steadfast. By not giving in to these subtle moves, you communicate that your boundaries are non-negotiable. Imagine this scenario. A friend you've distanced yourself from suddenly starts liking all your social media posts or comments on an old photo. It's a small act, but it's not accidental. They're trying to remind you of their presence and see if you'll acknowledge theirs. In moments like these, your power lies in your choice to either engage or continue holding your ground. Remember, silence is a response too, a powerful one. Another subtle test is creating opportunities for you to reach out. They might post something cryptic or vulnerable, hoping it will prompt you to check in. For example, a vague status update like, "Feeling off today," is often more than it seems. It's an open invitation for you to step back into the role of emotional supporter. While empathy is important, this is where discernment becomes crucial. Ask yourself, is this a genuine moment of vulnerability, or is it a calculated test of my boundaries? These subtle moves aren't inherently malicious. In many cases, they stem from fear. Fear of losing you, fear of rejection, or fear of change. However, fear isn't a strong foundation for rebuilding a connection. By staying grounded, you encourage the other person to approach you with sincerity rather than manipulation. This is the essence of Stoicism, leading with clarity, not chaos. Here's where your Stoic strength truly shines. Recognizing these moves for what they are allows you to navigate them with grace. Instead of reacting impulsively, you pause, reflect, and choose your next step intentionally. This doesn't mean being cold or dismissive. It means honoring your own boundaries while giving others the space to reflect on theirs. As we wrap up this section, remember this: tests are only as powerful as your reaction to them. By staying consistent in your energy and actions, you send a clear message that your silence isn't a game, it's a choice. Let them learn that the only way back into your life is through genuine effort and respect. Let's affirm our strength together. Comment below, strength over games. And if you're finding these insights valuable, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Your support fuels this community and ensures we continue growing together with wisdom and resilience. Keep going. Number 3, putting in extra effort to impress when someone realizes they might have lost your interest. One of the first instincts they may act on is to try harder to impress you. This reaction often stems from a mix of fear, regret, and the desire to rekindle the connection they feel slipping away. It's as if they suddenly become hyper-aware of their behavior and begin to amplify their efforts, hoping that their actions can reignite the spark that once existed. Let's break it down. Imagine this scenario. Someone who took your presence for granted is now reaching out more frequently, perhaps sending thoughtful texts or making grand gestures they rarely did before. This could look like unexpected compliments, offers to help with something you've been struggling with, or even surprising you with things they know you like. The purpose is clear. They want to stand out in your mind again, to remind you why you once gave them your time and attention. But why do they do this? The psychology behind such behavior often stems from a human desire for validation and connection. Losing someone's interest can feel like a personal failure, triggering insecurities that push them to overcompensate. Instead of addressing the root cause of their previous lack of effort, they may resort to external actions, believing that by doing more, they can undo the emotional damage caused by their prior neglect or complacency. However, here's the catch. Putting in extra effort doesn't always come from a genuine place. Sometimes, it's more about their fear of rejection or losing control than a real desire to mend the relationship. This is why it's crucial to pay attention to their motives. Are their actions consistent over time, or do they fade away once they feel they've regained your attention? Genuine effort is sustained and comes from a place of respect and understanding, not just a knee-jerk reaction to the fear of losing someone. For example, a sudden flurry of activity might include planning elaborate dates, showing up unannounced with gifts, or flooding you with compliments. While these gestures might seem flattering, they often carry an air of desperation. Their underlying message is, "Please notice me again." But the question you must ask yourself is this: are these efforts aligning with your needs, or are they simply trying to ease their own discomfort? Here's where boundaries come into play. It's essential to evaluate whether their efforts are truly meaningful or if they're just surface-level attempts to win back your favor. If someone suddenly starts putting in extra effort after realizing you've lost interest, it's worth considering whether they're willing to make deeper changes in how they value you, respect your boundaries, and support your personal growth. Interestingly, this phase of extra effort can also be an opportunity for you to reassess the dynamics of the relationship. Were their previous actions draining you emotionally? Did you feel unappreciated or undervalued? If so, their sudden change might indicate they're capable of adapting, but only if it's coupled with genuine self-reflection and long-term effort. A temporary burst of attention shouldn't cloud your judgment. Consistency is key. Now, let's flip the perspective for a moment. When someone starts trying harder to impress, it might also reflect their realization of your worth. Losing your interest can serve as a wake-up call, forcing them to see you in a new light. This shift can be empowering for you, as it reinforces the importance of self-respect and maintaining high standards. If someone values you, their efforts should align with your expectations and be grounded in sincerity. Ultimately, it's up to you to decide how you respond to these changes. If the extra effort feels meaningful and aligns with what you truly need, it may open the door to repairing the connection. But if it feels performative or insincere, it's equally valid to maintain your distance and focus on relationships that prioritize mutual respect and understanding. So, folks, here's a question for you. How do you distinguish between genuine effort and performative gestures? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button to join this community of Stoic thinkers who value self-respect and clarity in relationships. Let's keep exploring these topics together. Number 4, entering the silent observation phase. There's a shift that happens when someone realizes they've lost your interest, but instead of acting impulsively, they step back into silence. This phase of silent observation is more common than you might think. It's a time when they're quietly watching, reflecting, and assessing the situation. But make no mistake, this silence is not passive. It's calculated, deliberate, and often aimed at understanding how to regain the connection or, in some cases, protect their ego. The silent observation phase is a subtle yet powerful reaction. Rather than bombarding you with messages or trying to win you back with grand gestures, they withdraw just enough to observe how you respond. Will you reach out to them? Will you notice their absence? This phase is their way of gauging your level of interest without putting themselves in a vulnerable position. It's a defense mechanism, a way to avoid further rejection while staying mentally engaged in the situation. Now, why do they resort to this silent strategy? For one, it allows them to process their emotions without external distractions. Losing someone's interest can feel like a blow to the ego, and stepping back into silence gives them the space to figure out what went wrong. Did they say or do something that pushed you away? Were they too complacent or inattentive? This phase often involves a lot of internal questioning on their part. But there's another layer to this behavior: control. By remaining silent, they shift the emotional dynamics of the relationship. Silence can be a way of reclaiming power in the situation. It's their attempt to make you wonder what they're thinking, to make you question whether they've moved on, and perhaps to make you chase them again. This approach, while subtle, is designed to make you feel their absence without them having to overtly say or do anything. However, it's important to understand that silence doesn't always mean they've given up. In many cases, it's a calculated pause, a way for them to regroup and strategize their next move. They may be observing your social media activity, paying attention to mutual friends, or even reminiscing about the times you shared together. Silence, for them, becomes a tool for reflection and, sometimes, manipulation. From your perspective, the silent observation phase can feel confusing or even unsettling. You might find yourself questioning whether they still care, or if their silence is a sign that they've moved on. But here's the truth: silence speaks volumes. Their decision to observe rather than act shows that they're still invested in some way. But the key is to recognize this behavior for what it is: a phase, not a definitive answer to where they stand emotionally. So, what should you do when someone enters this silent phase? The most important thing is to maintain your emotional balance. It's easy to fall into the trap of overanalyzing their silence or trying to decode their every move. But doing so only gives them the upper hand in the emotional dynamics. Instead, focus on yourself. Continue living your life authentically and confidently without letting their silence disrupt your inner peace. Remember, silence can be a test. It's their way of seeing whether you'll break the silence first, whether you'll reach out to them out of curiosity or longing. But here's the thing: responding to their silence on their terms only reinforces their sense of control. By staying grounded and not reacting impulsively, you maintain your own sense of power in the situation. It's also worth noting that silence can be a double-edged sword. While it allows them to observe and reflect, it also gives you the opportunity to reassess the relationship. Ask yourself, was this connection truly fulfilling? Did their presence in your life align with your values and standards? Silence, when used wisely, can be a powerful tool for self-discovery and growth. In the end, the silent observation phase is just that, a phase. It's not the end of the story, but rather a moment of pause. How the situation unfolds depends on how both parties choose to respond. If their silence is a genuine attempt to reflect and improve, it could lead to meaningful change. But if it's merely a tactic to regain control, it's a sign that the relationship dynamics need to be reevaluated. Now, let me ask you, Stoic friends, how do you handle silence in relationships? Does it challenge you, or do you see it as an opportunity for growth? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. And while you're here, don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more insights on Stoic relationships and emotional clarity. Your journey to self-mastery starts here. Number 5. Rebuilding their emotional guard. Have you ever noticed how, when someone senses they've lost your interest, they begin to change the way they interact with you? It's subtle at first. Maybe they become less open, less responsive, and start to pull back emotionally. What you're witnessing is the rebuilding of their emotional guard. It's not that they no longer care. In fact, it's often the opposite. Deep down, they feel vulnerable, exposed, and unsure of how to navigate the shift in your connection. So they protect themselves the only way they know how, by creating distance. This emotional retreat is their way of regaining control over the situation. When someone feels like they're losing something valuable, the natural instinct is often to shield themselves from the pain of further rejection. They might tell themselves that pulling back will make them stronger, that building a wall between you will prevent them from feeling the sting of loss. But the truth is, this defense mechanism can backfire, intensifying their feelings of insecurity and longing instead of relieving them. You'll see this in how they start to limit emotional intimacy. They might avoid sharing their thoughts and feelings, or suddenly seem preoccupied or detached. They're trying to convince themselves, and maybe even you, that they're unaffected. But don't mistake their guarded behavior for indifference. Beneath that calm surface, they're likely grappling with a storm of emotions, wondering why things changed, and whether they'll ever regain the connection they once felt with you. It's important to understand that this response often stems from fear. Fear of being hurt, fear of rejection, or fear of appearing weak. Vulnerability is uncomfortable for many people, especially if they've been hurt in the past. By withdrawing and putting up walls, they feel like they're regaining control over their emotional state. But in doing so, they also risk isolating themselves further, deepening the distance between you. So, how do you respond when someone starts to rebuild their emotional guard? First and foremost, don't mirror their defensiveness. It's easy to feel frustrated or even retaliate by pulling back yourself, but this only reinforces their decision to withdraw. Instead, focus on maintaining calm, steady energy. Your composure communicates that you're not easily swayed, and that you're capable of navigating emotional shifts with grace. At the same time, give them the space they seem to be seeking. This doesn't mean you disappear entirely or become cold. It means you respect their need to process their emotions while subtly reminding them of your presence. Small, meaningful actions can go a long way here. Show them that you value their feelings by listening without judgment or offering support when appropriate. This quiet consistency can encourage them to lower their guard over time. It's also worth remembering that their behavior may not be about you at all. Sometimes, the walls they build are rooted in experiences that came long before you entered the picture. Maybe they've been hurt before, or maybe they've developed patterns of emotional withdrawal as a way to cope with insecurity. Recognizing this can help you approach the situation with more empathy and less frustration. It's not about fixing them or forcing them to open up. It's about creating an environment where they feel safe to reconnect at their own pace. Ultimately, rebuilding their emotional guard is a way for them to protect themselves. But it doesn't have to spell the end of your connection. By staying patient, consistent, and empathetic, you can show them that vulnerability doesn't have to be scary. Over time, they may come to see that the emotional walls they've constructed aren't necessary, and that genuine connection is far more rewarding than self-protection. Now, let's take a moment to reflect. If you've ever experienced someone pulling away emotionally, how did you handle it? Drop a comment below with steady strength and share your perspective. And if this resonates with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Your support fuels this channel to keep delivering content that helps you navigate relationships with clarity and confidence. Stick around, because what we're covering next will show you how to turn emotional distance into an opportunity for growth. Stay with me, you don't want to miss it. Number 6. Subtle attempts to spark jealousy. Have you ever noticed how some people, when they feel like they're losing your attention, try to make you jealous? It's not always obvious, and it's rarely a direct confrontation. Instead, it's subtle, a carefully placed comment, a social media post that feels like it's meant for you, or a story they casually share about someone else who's so interesting or so fun. These are not coincidences. They're deliberate moves designed to spark something in you. Jealousy, curiosity, or even insecurity. Why do people resort to this behavior? At its core, jealousy is a powerful emotion. When someone feels like you're slipping away or no longer prioritizing them, they may turn to jealousy as a way to reignite your attention. It's a way to test the waters. Do they still care enough to react? While also giving them a sense of control in the situation. If they can make you jealous, they feel validated. It reassures them that they still hold some influence over your emotions. This behavior often stems from their own insecurities. When someone feels uncertain about their place in your life, they might worry that they're not enough. Instead of addressing those insecurities directly, they choose a roundabout way to get your attention. It's an emotional game, one where the rules are unspoken but the stakes feel high. So, what do these subtle attempts look like? They can take many forms. Perhaps they mention someone they've been spending time with, emphasizing how much fun they've had. Or maybe they suddenly start dressing differently, paying extra attention to their appearance in a way that feels intentional. They might post photos or updates on social media that seem designed to catch your eye. A night out, a new hobby, or a comment from someone else that they make sure you notice. At first glance, these actions can seem innocent, but when you take a step back, you start to see the pattern. It's not about the people they're talking about or the things they're doing. It's about how they want you to feel. They're trying to provoke a reaction, to see if you still care enough to notice or feel bothered by their behavior. The question is, how should you respond when faced with these subtle attempts to spark jealousy? First, it's essential to stay calm and grounded. Jealousy is designed to trigger an emotional reaction, but when you respond with composure, you take away its power. Don't let their attempts pull you into a cycle of insecurity or competition. Instead, remind yourself of your own worth and the reasons why you've chosen to step back or reevaluate the relationship. Another critical step is to avoid playing the same game. It can be tempting to counter their behavior with your own attempts to make them jealous. But this only adds fuel to the fire. Relationships built on emotional games rarely lead to meaningful connections. Instead, focus on honest communication. If their actions bother you, consider addressing it directly. I noticed you've been talking a lot about insert example. Is there something you're trying to tell me? This approach shifts the dynamic from a game of jealousy to an opportunity for clarity. It's also worth reflecting on what their behavior says about the relationship as a whole. If someone feels the need to resort to jealousy to get your attention, it may indicate a lack of trust or open communication. Are they afraid to express their feelings directly? Do they feel unheard or undervalued? Understanding the underlying reasons can help you decide how to move forward, whether that means addressing the issue head-on or recognizing that the relationship may not align with your values. At the same time, it's important to recognize that jealousy isn't always a sign of love or deep feelings. Sometimes it's about control or ego. They might not want to lose you, but that doesn't necessarily mean they value you in the way you deserve. Distinguishing between genuine care and a desire to keep you as a backup or source of validation is crucial for your emotional well-being. Before we move on, let me ask you, do you respond to jealousy with calmness or confrontation? Comment, "Stay calm always" below to share your approach. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to join this incredible community where we uncover insights like these every week. Stay with me, because the next part will uncover a surprising twist in this emotional puzzle. You don't want to miss it. Number 7. Accepting the reality and adapting. Sometimes, the most challenging part of any relationship dynamic is coming to terms with the reality of the situation. When someone realizes that you've lost interest, the last stage of their emotional journey often involves acceptance and adaptation. At first, this might seem like the end of the story, but in truth, it's where the most profound changes can occur, both for them and for you. Acceptance doesn't come easily. For many, it's preceded by denial, frustration, or even anger. But once the dust settles and emotions cool, they are left to confront the truth. Things have shifted, and their efforts to regain control spark jealousy or impress you haven't worked. In this moment of clarity, they are forced to reevaluate not just the relationship, but also their own behaviors and expectations. This stage of acceptance is where growth begins. When someone accepts that they can no longer rely on the emotional connection they once had with you, it often pushes them to reflect deeply on what went wrong. They may begin to question their own actions. Was I too controlling? Did I take them for granted? Did I misunderstand their needs? These questions, while difficult, are essential for personal growth. For many, this process can lead to greater emotional maturity and self-awareness. However, acceptance also brings with it the challenge of adaptation. Once they recognize that the dynamic has shifted, they must decide how to move forward. This could take a variety of forms. Some may choose to adapt by improving themselves, working on their communication skills, addressing their insecurities, or becoming more empathetic in future relationships. Others, however, may take a less constructive path, such as building emotional walls or avoiding vulnerability altogether to protect themselves from future disappointment. One of the most fascinating aspects of this stage is how it often leads to an entirely different perspective on the relationship. What was once an emotional roller coaster may begin to feel more like a lesson, a moment in time that, while painful, offered valuable insights. This doesn't mean the person will suddenly let go of all feelings for you. Instead, they might start to appreciate the relationship for what it was, rather than clinging to what they hoped it would become. Adapting to this new reality also means redefining their priorities. When someone finally accepts that your interest is no longer there, they may shift their focus back to themselves. This can be an incredibly empowering moment. Instead of seeking validation from you, they begin to look inward, rediscovering their own strengths, passions, and values. This shift in focus often marks the beginning of a new chapter in their life, one that is less about chasing external approval and more about building internal confidence. From your perspective, this stage is equally important. Seeing someone reach a place of acceptance can be a relief, but it can also spark your own self-reflection. Did you communicate your feelings clearly enough? Did you handle the situation with compassion and respect? These questions are worth considering, as they can help you grow in your ability to navigate relationships with integrity and emotional intelligence. That said, not everyone handles acceptance gracefully. For some, it might manifest as bitterness or resentment. They may pull away completely, not out of a sense of peace, but as a way to protect their pride. Others might continue to test the waters, hoping that the passage of time will change your feelings. It's important to recognize that their response to this stage says more about them than it does about you. The key takeaway here is that accepting reality and adapting is a necessary, albeit painful, process in relationships. It's a reminder that change, while uncomfortable, is often where growth begins. For both you and the other person, this stage is an opportunity to let go of what no longer serves you and embrace what lies ahead. And as you reflect on this, let me leave you with a question. How do you handle moments when you need to let go? Comment below with "Growth through change." Thank you for staying until the end of this video. Remember, growth often comes from reflection and understanding. So take these insights to heart and apply them to your journey. If you found value in today's discussion, don't forget to subscribe for more meaningful content like this video and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters, and I'd love to hear it. See you in the next one.